what they're going to do with it. When a case comes in, we've got to make an offer to a defense attorney at an early stage. Now, when I say an offer, I'm talking about plea agreements. Now, people think that plea agreements may be a bad thing, but I've got to tell you, 85 to 90% of the cases around the nation are disposed of through plea agreements. 3% to 4% go to trial. So if we take that case, and when we take it to grand jury, we're prepared to go to trial from the time we get it by working with law enforcement from the time they get the case and working hand in hand with them. We can better evaluate that case, we can better dispose of that case, and you're making a plea agreement, not a plea bargain. So just changing personnel over, getting them into one court, whatever court has the highest level of cases, and it working together, you can knock a dent in that backlog. One of the other things that I've seen that's pretty innovative, and I've participated in that, was we have a finite amount of money in that budget, and they've got their salaries, and we're not paying overtime to these employees. But what I've seen through some district attorneys, and it seems to work with the Federal Standards Labor Act, is give them comp time, and that's a quality of life issue that they can take off time later. They can work overtime, longer hours, put more production into screening these cases and trying to move these cases, and eventually take some time off. It's not cash, but in getting that backlog caught up, it's a short-term fix, and we may be able to make a big dent in it that way. So that's some of the ways that I'm looking at getting rid of backlogs now. I've done it in a trial court when I came in with 1,000 cases on the docket. We didn't clear it, but we knocked it down to 500 that way, so it is a doable deal. I agree with Ms. Dowell on that. It's a doable deal.
Next question.
Yes, Angela, in your discussion, you mentioned that the court only sits 31 days a year. My calendar has
31 weeks
a year. My calendar has 52 weeks a year. I will tell you, I have also heard that same 31 weeks a year from Judge Jones. I find it very difficult to understand in an environment where our expenses and what it costs and the backlog that we have. It's hard for me to understand why there's only 31 days available.
because you have 4 counties. 31 weeks
I
for
would
4
like
counties.
to know, and I want both of you to answer, as a district attorney,
Jesus.
what can you do
Hire more
to
judges.
influence that so that that schedule is no longer like a schedule of a circuit riding judge? Because we now have 2 judges in this district.
That's it. We need more judges.
I would like to know what you as a district attorney could do in order to have more days of court so you could get this backlog out of the way.
Well, I'm going to answer that to the best of my ability, but my understanding is the 31 weeks includes both judges in all 4 counties, okay? And remember that they take 2 weeks off in July and they take 2 weeks off in in December for the holidays, as well as a week in November. So that's 5 weeks out of the 52 that's gone automatically. There's other jury weeks that are set aside for civil cases.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that we can force the judges to do something about. We can encourage, we can work with them, we can ask, we can lay the stats out for them, we can show them the cases that we have backlogged, but the judges set their schedules. The judges determine, they send a list, a calendar to the DA's office and say, these are the jury weeks you have next year. We don't get to say, we can ask for more, but all that is a request. So it really it's really all determined by the judges and how many weeks they want to sit in jury trials. And like I said, these are not the only cases that go to jury trials. We have CPS jury trials that are termination of parental rights trials. We have civil jury trials that have to be set as well. And I realize that that's not our priority right here. But the bottom line is the judges make the determination. They set their schedule, they set their docket, they decide when they want to be there, they decide when they don't want to be there. And all we can do is be ready to go to trial on the weeks that they allow us to have a jury brought in. And I can assure you we will be ready when they're ready. And we will encourage them to have more. We can ask for visiting judges, that costs money. The state used to provide for more financing for visiting judges. It's not anymore, so that is a cost issue with the counties. So I can assure you that I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that we can move as many cases as we can per year and have as many jury weeks as we can and not waste a jury week and not let one go by the wayside because everything falls off and something pleads instead of being taken to trial. That's why I was talking about being smart about crime, and we have to know what gets set on the jury docket really needs to be set on the jury docket so that we get those cases tried, as opposed to setting things on the jury docket that all end up getting pled at the end and we waste the jury week. But that's what we can do, I believe, from our standpoint. But ultimately, that lies with the judges and that lies with your votes.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good answer.
Well, I kind of disagree that we're at the mercy of the judges. The district attorney carries a pretty heavy hammer and a persuasion. When you talk to judges about backlogs, it's the backlogs on their docket. It's in everyone's interest to move those. And if we need more dates, if there are dates available, that aren't civil trial weeks, or even if there are civil trial weeks, let's back up that civil case with some criminal cases. So if the civil case settles, let's push a criminal case on. But the key is being ready. What we did in one office I was in is every Monday we had 50 cases on the docket. Now, there are not going to be 50 cases tried that week, but we had to have 6 ready to go to trial, so it was not going to waste the jury panel. And we used every week. I have to say, we used a few more weeks than 31 weeks. It was, we used a good solid 40 weeks of trial at least. And all of the judges knew
we have
that
2.
if there were backlogs that weren't moved, somebody was going to complain about it, and it was probably going to be my boss, the district attorney, because he had a vested interest in getting rid of that backlog, and they did as well. So we used persuasion. Sometimes it was heavier persuasion than others, but they agreed to increase the trial load. They got rid of the backlogs, and there was one court that eliminated their backlog altogether. So it can be done. It takes persuasion and sometimes a little pressure.
I don't think so. I think Petey screwed up.
Other questions?
One more.
Both of these candidates have used up their 8 minutes. How many more questions do we have here? We specifically left these guys last so we could run along a little bit. Yes? All right, let's let Liz have one more question and wrap it up. Is that all right with everybody?
Okay, I just want to follow up on the last question. I believe, Angela, you mentioned that we don't have enough judges to handle what's on the docket. We've got the 2 and that we've got more than they can handle, and that there's an expense to bring in a judge from elsewhere. But could you give me some information about what the trade-off is between what we're paying to keep people in jail versus what it would cost to bring a judge in to hear a trial?
Well, I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm not going to say something I'm not sure about. But what I can tell you is my experience in the past was the state allowed so many dollars for visiting judges, for the counties to pay visiting judges. One of the reasons that we created, that Judge Jones had the second court created, was because the state was cutting the budget for visiting judges. And we weren't, in the past, prior to having the 424th created, he was able to have a visiting judge on a pretty regular basis that was paid for by the state. However, when the state cut that budget and the backlog started growing, that's when Judge Jones went to the legislature and pushed for getting a second district court created that would be funded by the state. So that's when the 424th was created. Now, because of that, the state has continued to cut the budget for the visiting judges. I don't want to pretend to tell you that I know exactly what the budget is or exactly what the state pays for a visiting judge. But once the state budget is exceeded, I know then it would fall on the county. So, there's always a trade-off. That's not a determination that gets to be made, again, by the DA's office. The judge's office is who determines whether they're going to call and request a visiting judge or not. I don't want to pretend to know what the judge's budget exactly is or what their underlying motives or issues are. I can only tell you that I will do the best of my ability to make sure that we get the cases to trial. And if we get a visiting judge, we'll do that. I know that there's some other, one other court in North types of grants and get a child abuse judge that we could have a child abuse trial going every week and be ready for that if that were available. Certainly I'm looking for any type of funding that's available out there and for any ability to get these cases moved. I think that that's the goal of the district attorney's office, but once again, I'm going to say I don't have the authority to tell Judge Mills or Judge Jones what they're going to do with their office. And someone else may think they can push them in a different direction, and maybe they can, but I'm not going to presume that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, so,
Excuse me, I'd like to hear Sam's comment on this question.
okay, you did address it to her, but you
No,
both
no,
put.
I referred to following up on a comment that she made that I wanted both to share.
So the question is for both candidates in, instead of answering.
And don't get me wrong, I didn't mean to sound like I was talking about pushing judges around. I'm just talking about being persuasive, make sure we're all on the same page about who's got the docket. Now, Ms. Ellis, one of the interesting things you said about your question was that compared to the price of keeping somebody in jail, you know, I honestly don't know what the daily rate for a visiting judge is, but I know some of the things that have been done in some jurisdictions is they'll have one docket with a visiting judge that is solely a jail docket for those people that are in jail, and they will push for a disposition on those cases. Because at $35 a day, it costs about $1,050 a month for somebody to be housed. So you can figure, if you got a jail docket of 20 prisoners in there, it doesn't take long to justify the trade-off, even if the county's paying for it, as opposed to state funds at 20 prisoners at $1,000 a month. And I'm just using that as an arbitrary number, but that's the kind of thing we've got to look at. We've got to think of innovative solutions that have been tried elsewhere and not just use the same model we've always used. This is the way we've always done it. Doesn't always work. So we've just got to think outside of the box and look at innovative solutions and examine exactly the kind of thing you're talking about. Trade-offs in money spent here versus what we can spend now up front and reduce those costs in the long run.
Thank you, Sam. All right, since we're out of time and